I must go and get my teeth. I forgot to put my teeth in. A postcard from Guwahati. I'd write, wish you were here, but there's a grey shroud over this place today, as if the Brahmaputra wants to slip by without being noticed. I've crossed the road from my room to pass through the golden gates of Riverfront Park, a walkway, a hem on the city's sari, between rattling thoroughfare and river. I'd write, wish you were here, but I believe you'd feel awkward too. I'm the oldest by more than 40 years, threading away beside water, beside student couples holding hands, not wanting to take their eyes from each other, but never kissing. Like birds on a wire, they sit on every bench, step and low wall. I'd write, wish you were here, but you should see the sideways glances I get. I've dared to wear white hair, be single, stroll dressed for anything but courting. I turn to the pale violet river. It distances itself. Even egrets at its mud edge appear sad. A pond heron in the shallows takes 2 steps, stops, regards its reflection, disapproves. God, I do look silly in this hat. Right, this is what you would call fresh off the printer. It's called Still Breathing, which is something I'm quite pleased to be able to say that I can still do. And it follows on from, it's after and in the style of a poem by Donald Hall, which was called Death something or other. Can't find it, but Death Work. It was after Donald Hall's Death Work. Wake when phone vibrates. Kick off duvet. Sit on bed edge. Enter brief state of self-hypnosis. Open eyes long enough to prick finger. Inject insulin. If it's a Tuesday, weigh oneself. Cough. Check emails. Facebook, play 10 games of free cell, drink tea, eat malted wheat cereal, step outside, test weather, check seed trays for signs of life, look into the void of a study for inspiration, cough. Consider lockdown, poor state of health, mortality, one's own. Read poems by others for inspiration. Have chicken soup and 1 slice of toast for lunch. Watch Bargain Hunt and news headlines. Cough. Shower. Cough. Get dressed. Cough. Invariably mutter, for fuck's sake, cough again. Feel a poem brewing. Write 2 lines and abandon it. Yawn. Feel a need to nap. Inspect every plant in the front garden. Marvel at how traffic has increased. Cough. Pork madras with basmati rice. Burn a plain naan. Decant wine. Turn on TV. Spicy curry makes nose run. Cough. Open front door to let in evening. Drink red wine. Look for moon. Inject insulin. Lay head on pillow. Cough. There we are, it's a day in my life. Oddly enough, I have just printed something off. And it's called Phonophobic, which is that fear of loud noises or the fear of the expectation of loud noises, which is more or less where I'm coming from. Phonophobic. Now, if you want to be cruel to me, squeeze me into a small room with balloons, or for extreme torture, lock me in one with balloons and children. The sound of their sticky fingers squeaking over thin, highly stretched rubber will shred my nerves faster than the anticipation of a firework adding a great clap of noise to its light show. It's like being in a theatre to watch a murder mystery when one of the players pulls out a gun and points it. It's the not knowing if or when it will be fired. So don't look at me in my aisle seat. At some point I may have to cover my ears, or worse, leave the room, just as I left the kitchen with the pressure cooker when it started to rattle and hiss. And it's not that I dislike dogs or fear them. It's the potential for a sudden outrage of bark loud enough to ring bells that breaks me. God, I should still be intact at 80. Please don't anchor a plastic helium-filled heart to my walking frame. A birthday announcement looking fit to burst. So there you have it. I was in India in January. Remember January? That's when we never even heard of things like COVID-19, coronavirus, social distancing, lockdown. These were all terms to come later in the year. And I went out on lots of safaris. It was mainly a wildlife adventure. And oddly enough, in the one of the places in Assam, right in the east of India, I saw lots of owls. And bearing in mind these were all daytime safaris, if you like, seeing lots of owls was unusual, but there they were in a tree, staring back at you. One of them was a brown fish owl. It's clear from the way you wink one eye that you cannot make good on 3 wishes you promise. And there is no trace of a lamp rubbed to generate such a genie as you. Dense column of beige smoke with brown sparks, topped with tufted squashed head, bearing lunar eclipses of the sun, staring, expecting answers nevertheless, perched like a maharaja under a fan of bamboo frond. Although as the sun sinks you lose patience, submit, and dissolve quick as you came into vapour and claw. To let go of your perch, drift off, pausing here and there to announce your existence in a bass boom, an act of ventriloquism to which the forest listens always, watches you reform on a mango or peepal tree overlooking a nulla or jeel. Tell you about those after. You are water now more than smoke, muddier, fetid, reeking of a pretense of river smells, watching for the twitch of small fish. And as water, you touch water. You rise, fall, skim, play, wade, bathe, dry off and preen. Yesterday the forest under moonlight caught you tearing flesh from a putrefying carcass of crocodile. A nulla, by the way, is a watercourse or riverbed, and a jeel, much the same as a pond or marsh or similar wetland. So there you are. The senses, according to a championship snooker player whose world is a close mowed lawn, green bays with 6 flower beds scooped hollow, netted. The air is still and fretful, tinged with the scent of rubbed blue chalk. Sky is black, filled with the light of an alignment of suns. One rarely looks there. Sounds are applause, a gasp, a cough, white noise from outer space. And closer in, leather butting spheres of phenolic resin. They roll with low rumble, bump with a clack, which can be joyous, anticipating a drop, netted catch, disappearance from this flat landscape where feelings are kept in check, poker face. Physically, one experiences smooth maple sliding through a valley of skin, a bridge we call it, open, closed, elevated or rail. Taste is insignificant, a dryness in the mouth or chill of water over tongue when waiting for a turn. Sight rules. One bends low, stares down tapering queue to tip, where it meets white. A moon that must be jabbed with measured weight to have it spin or not, or be stunned. It's a performance. Nothing else matters in this short, multi-framed life. Physics in a bright garden 6 feet by 12. Thank you. Saturday, I think it was, I zoomed in on a Peterborough Library Edward Thomas Festival, where there was a conversation between Andrew Motion from his home in Baltimore, USA, and Michael Longley in Belfast, talking about their love of Edward Thomas poems, which up until I sort of seen that, I hadn't really fully appreciated Edward Thomas, and I looked at him again and made a note of the poems they read, and it inspired this little thing that I've written. Michael Longley called him, he's the rain poet, isn't he? So Edward Thomas says, it rains and nothing stirs within the fence. And I say, nothing except leaves pressed like piano keys of darkest grey and white in an almost empty village pub where a single man plays Chopin's Etude Tristesse. Still it rains as he homes last chord in E, pauses, reflects, leans back, smooths beard, closes lid, stands, tucks stall under, deliberate steps, numerable as a ceremony for tea. He returns his glass, bids farewell with a weak salute, slow marches to sprung door, pushes it, bows to new music and flees. Still it rains. Chopin's sadness hangs but fades as glassware's washed, dried, chinked. The landlord comes from behind his bar with spray and cloth to disinfect, erase. Thank you. This is a poem about Australia, Daphne. Coming from the bushfires from late last year. Lewis understands Australian heat, how it flares and flares, eases and flares again in a fractious routine. But this ultra heat, anointed with eucalyptus oil, belching raw, acrid smoke, pours like boiling water, weightless, anti-water that devours, spits, climbs, snatches his hind legs, crisps fur, blackens with cruel alchemy, bites skin so he cries like a baby while crossing a road from one fire to another. The fright of flames and carbon black fuel anxiety. Then there's the smoke, the sting. He starts to climb. Hands of some other being fold skin peeled from its own body around his middle. Fear clamps with a force strong as fingers that pull, worse perhaps than the terror of that which burns. The enfoldment and soothing voice of a calm until it pours cold water over. That hurts. And too confused and sore to complain as he might, he's whisked between trees on hot-baked earth. He's pushed into an inside where touch and smell are wrong, where he's growled at a speed too fast to grasp, to another inside, where more seems wrong than right. How they jibber-jabber. Lewis, they say, Lewis. Inside, one has to have a name. They stare, maul, mask him, blow oxygen, cream his sores, dress burnt limbs in paw print orange and blue, tempt him with fresh leaves. But wandering in and out of animal dream, he's slow to chew down even one. In the haze of it comes clarity. No healing, no hope. The wounds beneath, sun and sky, rage like fires in northern New South Wales. Sorry, Lewis. We tried and failed. We all failed. Hold still. Here comes a little scratch. Okay. That's cheery. L.S. Lowry paints my portrait. After a portrait of Anne by L.S. Lowry in 1957. He wears a mask, but I can see he's wrestling with my image. It's in creases around his eyes. He's trying to read me. But I'm southern right through like Margate in a stick of rock. The space around me cannot be as red or white rose as in his portrait of Anne. And the whites of my eyes, though fading with age, still mimic Kentish post-war light. My skin is scrubbed by long exposure to Devon air. I don't ask for Mediterranean blue, but he's washing the canvas, dark as a downpour brewing over Dartmoor. It will better show off the whiteness of my hair, he says. And he'll bless me with a loss of 30 or 40 kilos. He's no time for plump, for heavyweights. I watch him select more paints. I'm scrutinized. He invites vermilion to join ivory black, flake white and Prussian blue already chosen. He sighs its name in his grey sky accent, studies me again, lifts a tube of yellow ochre. He tells me it'll be modernist, stylistic, just left of centre. It won't exactly look like you, he says. In you I see Kentish orchards, cobnuts and conkers. There's a hint of sadness. I'll open up your eyes, line them, have your lips closed straight, much the same colour as your shirt. I point out that mine is beige. He isn't listening. There won't be much shadow. I don't really do that. Perhaps just a dash under your chin.
So good to see you again.
Thank you, kind of you. Well, yes, not surprisingly, this is my one concession to a hospital poem. I try not to write them when I'm in hospital. This one's called, and will cheer you up no end, To a Multi-Storey Car Park. A multi-storey car park with November sun on its flanks. It has a rattan or bamboo appearance, a hint of Polynesia in the city. If only it wasn't dark grey and cream, but dried fibre, bark and Devon red, a nod to the one great tree they've left standing in front to the left, that takes light so well on its random arms and late leafy fingers. What I see from the sterility of a hospital ward is soundless, squat. I cannot taste or smell its air. A grey straight road tattooed with yellow cross-hatching and disabled parking runs from below here to there, where vertical meets horizontal, where inner strip lights glow like the static Morse code when the sun hides. And there's brick dusted white, a vastness of it, under gravelled rooftop, bedded with the guts and nerves of a hospital, and an obligatory buddleia sleeping, rust-coloured as the iron stays of the car park should be, would be. A pigeon drinks and drinks without weariness, tongues life from a puddle, a pondlet of Tuesday rain in depressed aluminium. There, I hope you feel better. I was watching TV, Netflix, and a series recommended by some people who were in beds near me in hospital, called Sons of Anarchy, which is basically a gang of Californian bikers. And they came out with this line that just struck me, even when I wasn't thinking about anything very much, through a haze of red wine. And the line was, Jesus is just a guy who cuts the lawn. Sons of Anarchy, Series 1, Episode 12. And that inspired a poem the next day. Jesus is just a guy who cuts the lawn. This explains why I haven't felt his presence, having forsaken my lawns, hover mowers, lawn rake and strimmer. My lot for 6 summers and more has been gravel, terracotta pots and decking. My nearest sward of God's grass lies beyond a chimney-high stone wall and railway line behind my house, a gentle rise grazed by sheep. There's no sign, no emanation of well-being, no need of a shepherd or lawn tender. The sweet smell of omniscience on an August evening, after he's passed through with his rotary blades, is just a memory, like the way he sharpened the colour and perfume of blue flowers and left his smile behind as day closed its eyes. There we are. I've written a couple of sequences of poems which are autobiographical, and I've been taking each decade of my life in turn. It's quite easy when you're born in a year that ends in 0. You can just do each decade. So I've done the 50s and 60s, and I've just started a first poem of the year on the 70s. It's still a bit of a work in progress, but here it is. Pivotal. He enters his light bulb decade, the 1970s, and perks up. Back in education. He wants to be a teacher, first of his clan to become a bachelor.
He's had girlfriends. Now he has one-night stands and relationships, slicing deep into his emotions, different from the unfamiliar places he's taken to studying harmony and music, the history of art. And with the age of majority demoted to 18, he's a man overnight, no longer arguing with his father. They have discussions. A Sex Discrimination Act is passed, and single women can get a mortgage. That makes no sense, my father says. A new word's popped up, chauvinist. He gets it. It's not Dad's fault, but he is one. You may remember 2 weeks ago, I read from a beginning sequence on a new decade, 1970s. I'd already written a sequence on the 50s and 60s. I couldn't write about the 40s because I wasn't born. But this is yeah, no, it's true. So this is the second poem about the 1970s, when I went on holiday with my parents to Spain. If only I can find it. Right. Remember the 70s? Yeah. He thinks they've grasped it. God, Mum, Dad, that in theory at least, he's a man, one of voting age who can toss in a mild expletive without expecting reprimand. He even takes the wheel of the family motor caravan, driving them south through France. He watches Dad fall asleep before taking over again to wind the coastal eastern edge of the Pyrenees into Franco's Spain, with its language not spoken by any of them. There was something fairy tale about Port Boo, and now Calera, not far in, undeveloped, a scattering of concrete blocks, and blue Mediterranean. They stopped there at a campsite with a short stroll to a cafe where the waiter speaks no English. A vending machine sells local cigarettes, 6pence a packet. Wine flavoured with peach costs 1 6 a bottle. When that's downed, they asked for another but different. They can afford it. How many ways are there of asking for different? Their second bottle is apricot. And when that too is put to bed, Dad suggests they invite the others to come and eat. So there we are.
Wow.
I like that.
God.
Peach and apricot wine. But also, yes, the 1 6 a bottle and 6pence for a packet of cigarettes.
Yeah, but you had to hold horizontally, otherwise the tobacco fell out the end.
Because cigarettes used to be really cheap in the 70s here anyway, didn't they?
Well,
not that cheap, but
no, that was pre-Euro cheap.
yeah, terribly. It was a little bit ahead of the curve, I think, going to Spain in the 70s. Your parents must have been fairly well-to-do, I think.
No, not really. I think we spent years nagging my dad to go overseas, and he couldn't cope with it. You know, there's plenty of places to see in Britain yet. You know, it was of that attitude. It's all right for him. He'd been to Trinidad in the war, and the US, and Puerto Rico, and all those sort of places. And you know, we'd never left the country, so it was all very exciting. I remember though, when we came off the ferry, he hadn't quite believed that they drove on the right, and so he just stayed on the left until a whole bank of mopeds started heading straight towards him.
Brilliant. Yeah, he thought it was a conspiracy. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well,
If
thank
he
you for
just
that.
stayed the chorus long enough, it would all be put right, right? Or something.
As you know, I've been writing sort of autobiographically, because I think the last poem that I read a few weeks ago was on that subject. And I was working my way through the 70s. I'm now into the 80s, but I'll read a 70s poem, which goes back to when I first started teaching in 76. And the following year, I thought it was perhaps time that I started driving lessons. So this was that experience. I was in Wales, in Monmouth, and this also includes some of my thoughts on life when you're age 26. In school, he puts it to his middle-aged colleagues, all born 1933, that at 26, he too is middle-aged. Now, given an average lifespan of 75 years or so, the first third is youthful. Between 25 and 50 comes middle age. And after 50, one is old, rotting down bit by bit, like neglected fruit in a bowl towards elderly. And after school, he's learning to drive. About time, he's crept into his middle age. His instructor is an attractive, chatty woman of about 40, who sympathizes with his inability to reverse around corners, but congratulates his quick mastery of the three-point turn. When she gets him to drive down a quiet lane out of town and park, he half expects, rather hopes, she may make a move on him. He can tell she's thinking about it. And there's a pregnant pause when she gives him no instruction, command, kiss me. At the test centre, with an examiner beside him, he stalls, starts again, kangaroos out of the car park, winces, turns onto the road that passes his bedsit. When I slap my hand on the dashboard, a hand slaps he brings the car to a standstill like a gentleman. Clipboard marks and body language seem positive. He asks him to move on when appropriate. He stalls. Near his place of work, a reverse turn is laughable. His three-point turn, however, deserves a medal. He takes the bypass back to the test centre, where his driving instructor waits, regards a jerky return, his stall to a finish. She hovers while the examiner asks 3 highway code questions, sighs, smiles, like the examinee wishes his instructor had done in that country lane. Then he turns and says, "Well done, you've passed." Remarkable.
Oh, good one.
Wonderful.